Have I been dancing around this topic? Yes. Why have I been dancing around this topic? I don't know, I just found it funny. But it's a new year, so it's also time to usher in a new topic for this series. Rush Duel! Rush Duel is a new version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Officially supported by Konami with simplified rules. If you are the kind of person who says regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Is too complicated and just want it to start over, good news! This kid agrees with you and made a whole new game with a brand new card pool. And that new card pool comes with new skills, and these are on a once per turn standard rather than the regular once per duel. Since Duel Links is the only updated way to play this format outside of Japan, this means it's crucial that these skills are understood by all who want to play in this format. But before we get too far in, remember to click all the YouTube buttons. Alright, get ready for the rush! I'm sure all of you Duel Monsters fans heard new card pool and got concerned they removed those nostalgia bait cards like the Blue Eyes White Dragon. But don't worry, all those epic anime boss monsters are still here, but they are labeled as legend cards. Which is fair since all of them are above the curve of power for a Rush Duel card. Most of the time. This designation, however, means you can only play one of them, so if you want to make a deck around these cards, you'd better build around it. And of course, all of those decks are going to need a skill. Legend Draw is an archive skill you can only use starting on turn 4, which you can realistically reach in Rush Duel, but it only works if your opponent controls a high-level monster and your field is empty. Once it's activated, one of the 5 cards you draw for your turn will be the Legend monster you are playing in your deck. This is the Destiny draw of Rush Duel, as in the baseline skill everything else is compared to. And thankfully this one is an archive skill, so you don't need to worry about switching characters when using a deck that has it assigned. But this isn't the only skill to support Legend cards, and the next one is a personal favorite of mine, Magician Shuffle. This is also an archive skill that has a very generous restriction, only requiring that any monster with more than 2,500 attack points in your deck is a spellcaster. This is mostly to keep you from playing other decks' bosses like Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius, but the high attack ceiling allows for cards like Prima-Gatarna the Shining Superstar to easily fit in. The shuffle part of the name comes from this skill's ability, triggered by revealing a spellcaster in your hand with at least 1,700 defense points, of which there are currently 2. After doing so, you can add a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your deck to your hand, then you have to discard one of them. This is really cool, because if you immediately discard Dark Magician, due to her effect, Dark Magician Girl will now have 2,500 attack points on a single tribute monster. Stats so good, it got summoned Skull slapped with the Legend stamp. But enough about the old stuff, it's time for the new stuff! Skills based around the Rush exclusive Maximum Summon! Maximum Ragnarok is exclusive to Nail Shindoji, the creator of Maximum Summoning, and can only be used if every monster in your main deck is a Cyberse type with at most 100 defense points, and at least 8 of them are Maximum monsters. That Venn diagram of stats means that the only Maximum monster you can play is Nail's signature Yggdrago, the Sky Emperor. For its effect, by placing any card in your hand on the top or bottom of your deck, you can apply 2 changes to 2 monsters on either side of the field until the end of the turn. Affected monsters count as 2 tributes for a tribute summon, cutting down on the material needed to summon higher statted monsters like Belceptical Manny and Atrashute Hydron. Affected monsters also lose 800 attack points, quite the decent amount, as this is meant to be relevant only to the opponent's monsters, so they are easier to destroy. This is one of the best maximum skills in the game, supporting your deck and debuffing your opponent, all while filtering out to get the cards you want. Curious, isn't it, how the mechanic's creator gets all the best tools? And of course, if there's a new kind of card, we have to let the protagonist mess with it. Maximum Overload is exclusive to Yuga, and only requires that any monster with 2,100 or less attack in your deck is a machine or spellcaster monster. The machine typing is to fit Yuga's line of maximum monsters, the Magnum Overlords, and spellcaster is because Sevens Road. By discarding a maximum monster in your hand, you can set any monster from your hand, ignoring its normal play requirements, and you can flip it up immediately. Then, you can decrease the attack of an opponent's monster by 800. At the end of the turn you use this skill, you can put any maximum monster from your graveyard back on top of your deck, making sure that that card stays in rotation for later maximum summons. Unlike Nail's skill, this is less about enabling your Maxima monster as your main game plan, and more about ripping it apart to fuel playing 7's Road stuff. But that's still cool in its own way. Plus, the Magnum Overlords tend to lend themselves to massive comeback from behind victories rather than being consistent boss monsters like Yggdrago, so it makes sense to have them support, then suddenly turn around a duel for a maximum excitement. Hey, come here. You want the power of a maximum monster without the downside of losing your monster zones? Then you're gonna want to get your hands on one of these fusion cards. Do they have skills? Of course they have skills. Several, in fact. Dragia Star Nova is Luke's fusion skill and can only be used if your entire deck is Dragon or the fusion-exclusive High Dragon type. Like the fusion monsters this skill supports, you can choose one of 2 effects to activate. The first effect increases the attack points of a level 7 light monster to 2700 exactly. This is meant to combo with the Star Dragon, but can also help Luke's other dragons, like Multi-Strike Dragon Dragius. The second effect depends on your opponent's monsters to use rather than your own. If your opponent's level 5 or higher monster's total attack reaches certain thresholds, you can search or recover copies of Fusion and the Dragon, which is required fusion material for the powerful Hyper Strike Dragon Dragia Star F. However, since grabbing an endless stream of tribute fodder is kinda crazy, you can only get 1 dragon per game. Infinite fusions though, which at the very least is infinite discard fodder. It's a similar story for the Asana skill Dynamic Dream Builder, made to enable her infinite Constructor Worm Build Dream. It can only be used if your deck has exclusively Earthworm monsters in it, and only on a turn you have normal summoned a normal monster. Oh, right, it also can't be used on the first turn, a fact I always forget. Its first option is a free search or recovery of Fusion. Always good, means you only need to play 1, just like with Dragia Star Nova. The second option has you discarding a card to search or recover one of 2 cards, either the Constructor Worm's boss monster, Constructor Worm Build Dragon, or their field spell Peaks of Blistopia. You can only get the Build Dragon once per duel, but since cards in this deck require a field spell to use their effects, the Blistopia grab has no limits. The important part is that this skill doesn't lock out your ability to use the deck's maximum monster, Worm Excavator, the Heavy Cavalry Draco. I'm not kidding, no other fusion-based skill allows for this. While I'm sure that some future skill will eventually have the deck building allowances for it, for now, if you want to consistently fusion summon while having a maximum monster in your deck, this is the only option. Well, except for the Archive skill, Cybernetic Combat Customization, but only by technicality. This skill can only be used if your deck is exclusively machine-type monsters and none of them are level 7, as the level 7 machine pool has a lot of nasty stuff they don't want being splashed with Cyber Dragons. This does not include any piece of Magnum Overlord, but this skill is meant to support Cyber Dragon specifically, which is currently at Limit 3 on the Duel Links ban list. All the centerpieces of Maximum monsters are also at Limit 3, so at best, while remaining consistent, you have 2 Cyber Dragons and 1 Magnum Overlord, a problem that Dynamic Dream Builder does not have to deal with. But aside from the lack of massive numbers, this skill is pretty cool, at least from turn 2 onwards when it actually starts working. It increases the attack points of a monster you control by 500, but it only works on monsters with exactly 2100 or 2400 attack. No more, less, or in between 24 and 21 exactly. But in addition to that sweet attack gain, you can also shuffle a card in your hand back into your deck to replace it with a copy of either Fusion or Proto Cyber Dragon, which is a normal summonable monster with terrible stats, but it does take on the name of Cyber Dragon for fusion summons. However, you can only get 1 of each card per duel. No infinite fusions here. This skill is very popular because Cyber Dragon is a very easy deck to get all the key cards for, since it's all in a structure deck you can buy multiple times. It is also a decent deck to help older players transition to rush duels, as many of the cards in the deck are exact copies or fairly similar to their TCG counterparts. Would definitely recommend. But if you want some harder GX nostalgia, then Hero Rush Rising is for you. This archive skill requires that any monster in your deck above 1600 attack points is a light warrior, and that all of your fusion monsters are warriors. You send any card you control to the graveyard to reduce the attack and defense of any monster on the field by 600. Then you can search or recover fusion. Once again with no once per duel limit. This lets heroes summon Flame Winged Man very consistently, and let it hit monsters with higher stats to deal more burn damage with its effect. But due to the lax requirements, you can also play stuff like Crescent Moon Swordmaster, which is also cool. There's been so much talk about fusions and maximums, and all of it is focused on 7's characters or older cards imported to Rush. What about good old-fashioned tribute monsters, and wasn't there that other Rush show? I wonder who's in it.
Yudias Velgear.
Zweijo's Will Velgear. Go Rush!
Galactica Order and Void Destruction are exclusive to Yudias and Zweijo respectively, and focus on the Rush Duel exclusive Galaxy type. They each can only be used from turn 2 onwards and require your deck to be almost exclusively made of the Galaxy type monsters. Void Destruction gives no lenience, it is all Dark Galaxies or the skill does not work. Galactica Order is a bit more lenient, only requiring that any monster above 1400 attack is a light galaxy, letting you use any lower statted monsters you want. Galactica Order has you sending a level 7 normal galaxy monster from your hand to the graveyard, like Yudias' ace monster Galactica Oblivion, then replaces it with either a copy of Secret Order or Meteor Charge from your deck. Meteor Charge gives piercing to a galaxy monster, and if you use it on a normal monster, you can change the battle position of an opponent's monster to its much likely weaker defensive position. Because of the potential for massive damage, you can only get this spell once per duel. Meanwhile, Secret Order is a very annoying spell that summons back a normal monster from your graveyard and then boosts its stats to at least 3000 and gives it protection from trap cards. Since Secret Order is not a once per duel search, anyone facing this deck will have to deal with 3k trap immune monsters every turn. Fun! Instead of letting you slam down a field that can chew up anything short of a maximum monster, Void Destruction instead helps enable Zweijo's signature Void Velgs, which can already do that themselves, thank you very much. If you have a normal monster on your field, you can mill the top 3 cards of your deck, then put any one monster with at least 1600 attack from those 3 into your hand. Also, the normal monster now has piercing. This just happens. I always forget. Due to the deck building restrictions, your normal monster options are 2 1500 attack monsters, a 0 attack monster, and the convention-breaking 1600 attack Void Velg Pale Rider. So this is not completely consistent, but you are more than likely to be able to dump half your deck into the graveyard over the course of the game, and even if you need some of those cards back, Void Velg Cataphract can get your bosses into your hand, while Void Velg Globule can put them into the deck for later. Between these two, there is a universe of possibilities, so go have fun with them. Until next time, bye!